What's up, people? It's Rao, and welcome back to Reasoning with Rao. Today, I should have put a shirt and tie on because today I'm transitioning into a manager, into a coach, into a tactician, and I'm going to be going over the 5 best systems Liverpool could run with their current squad. And I have to preface this with the fact that this is all opinion based. You might think that number 5 should be number 1. You might think that number 2 shouldn't even be on the list. And you might think that there's a system that I haven't covered or a formation I haven't covered that I really ought to have. And if that's the case, then please let me know in the comments because I love it when people disagree with me. I love it when I can talk to somebody about why I think something would work versus why I think it wouldn't. And I love it when people have their own ideas too. I mean, for 4 years, I studied philosophy, and every lecture, every seminar was just us arguing with each other. And now some of those people are some of my best friends. So bring it on. But yeah, I'm going to be covering the 5 best systems that I think Liverpool could use this season. And hey, some of these are kind of crazy. Like when I look at them on the tactics board, I'm thinking, nah, this can't work. But when I think about them a little deeper, hey, they might work. But before we actually get into those 5 lineups, there is a set of criteria that I've used to rank them. And when I actually used the criteria to rank all of them, some of the systems actually ranked higher than others, and it was kind of surprising because there was one that I thought, okay, this is going to be the best, and it actually isn't. It's actually in second place. So the first is balance. And by balance, I mean, how does each part of the team work together? How does the midfield complement the forwards? How does the midfield protect the defense? Is there some sort of asymmetry or tactical imbalance with the lineup? Number 2, defensive stability. How stable and structured is the defense? How many players are involved in the rest defense? And which players actually have key defensive responsibilities in the lineup? Number 3, attacking threat. How many and which players are actually involved in getting forward and attacking? And how suited are those players to the positions that they're actually being asked to be in? Number 4 is control. How good is the team at actually maintaining possession and recirculating the ball? Is this a type of team that's going to try and score 5 goals a game and just counter-attack and probably have 40 to 50% possession? Or is it a team that favors structured possession and structured progression and is really going to have around 60 to 65% possession? And number 5 is personnel. Now this one is not really that important, but I thought I'd throw it in there because I really like certain players. There are certain guys that I want to see on the pitch, and we just had a massive transfer window, so if we're not utilizing some of the new signings, then I think a lineup could be docked for that. So I've added it as one of the criteria. But because it's not really important to the actual performance on the pitch, like it doesn't matter who's on the pitch when it comes to creating a good team, a good system, it's worth half as many points as everything else. So 1 through 4, balance, defensive stability, attacking threat, and control, all ranked 1 through 10. But personnel, because it's not really that important and it's really just an arbitrary thing, that's only ranked 1 to 5. So now that we know what the rules are, what the criteria is, and how I'm going to be doing this, let's get into system number 5. Because I couldn't start with 1, could I? Do it and then everybody would click off. So number 5. Okay, here is system number 5. We have what looks like on paper a 4-4-2 with Wirtz as a striker, which is really more of a second striker. So you could really think of it like this, but I don't want it to be like that. I would prefer him to have less defensive responsibility, which is something I'll get into in a second. And it will really just look like this little 4-4-2 kind of thing. And one thing that you're going to see throughout every single lineup is that I'm just going to put Mamdashvili in goal because Alisson is injured, and until we actually see him play a game, like I have no reason to believe he's going to be back. So Mamdashvili is going to be in goal for every single system. So across the back line, we have Robertson, Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate, and Conor Bradley. This is the most bog standard back line that you could ask for. It's the most structured and defensively sound one that we have. And until I see Kirkes actually have a good performance, like I don't really want to see him play. So for the time being, we're just going to have Robertson in, and I think I actually have him in every single one, but we will see as I get onto the next ones. So yeah, that's the defensive line, and I think it allows the rest of the team to be the way it is. When you look at the remaining 6 players, you think that's just ridiculous, it's nonsense, but I think the only reason it could work is if you use this back line. If you put Frimpong in at right back, over with, bro. There's no defensive stability. If you put Kirkers in at left back, there's no control. And again, not very good defensive stability. And you don't need somebody like Kirkers. You don't need somebody like Frimpong in this lineup because the attacking threat is already so high. So as we move on to the midfield, we have just a midfield two, a little double pivot of Ryan Gravenberch and Dominic Szoboszlai. These two, again, in a system like this, are, I think, non-negotiables because they provide the most defensive stability because they are the best runners and they're the best duel winners. I think if McAllister was in midfield or Curtis Jones was in midfield, then we'd have a problem with getting run over. So I think those two have to be in if the remaining four are going to be in. And then the front line is where it gets wacky and weird. We have Ekitike playing as a pseudo left winger, left midfielder. Salah is his opposite number on the right side with Wirtz and Alexander Isak up front. And what I like about this front four is that it seems to be the best way, or it feels like, because we haven't actually seen it, the best way to get Florian Wirtz playing well. Because he's close to players and able to link up with players that he's looked good linking up with this season. Before Isak joined in the Community Shield, he looked really good linking up with Ekitike. And in the Champions League game against Atletico Madrid, Wirtz actually looked really good with Isak playing as number 9 and Wirtz just in behind him. So what I think this system does is it really just maximizes Florian Wirtz, and I think any system that maximizes Florian Wirtz is a decent system. It's a pretty good system. I would like to see, obviously every system I put on here, I'd love to see it in real life so I could see which one's actually the best. But what I would say is that it'd be interesting to see how the control actually works or who the tempo controller is, because in most of our games that ends up being Dominic Szoboszlai, but in this system we're kind of shifting it over to Florian Wirtz. He's able to drop in, pick up space, find the ball. Essentially he's given free rein to just roam wherever he wants. And that's kind of the role Szoboszlai has had in the right side of, or on the right side of the pitch or in the center of the pitch. So I'd really like to see it. It probably won't ever happen. Maybe with like 60 minutes or after 60 minutes in a game, we might see something like this, but it would be really interesting. So now onto the rankings. So for balance, I've given it a 5 because I think with two central midfielders, you obviously run the risk of getting overrun in midfield. Most Premier League teams have 3 midfielders. They have like runners. They have very physical players. And since I've decided, or since this system doesn't really have Wirtz playing as a number 10, he's really a pseudo striker or like a shadow striker. Him being involved in any defending is not the point of the system. So this is really like a dream kind of setup, but these two in midfield, I just don't really see how they're going to be able to survive for 90 minutes. So again, it might be something we see with 30 minutes left in the game, chasing the game or trying to get another goal or something like that. So yeah, 5 for balance. As for defensive stability, I've given it a 4 because, again, same kind of thing. There aren't enough bodies, I should say, in the rest defense. Because if we were to push everybody up where we assume they could eventually be if we had the ball, this kind of defensive structure is not very conducive of preventing counter-attack. There's a lot of space on the right side and on the left side, or I guess it would be reversed for the opposition. And with Szoboszlai in the kind of attacking form he is right now, and Gravenberch being given the license to actually maraud forwards, there's just a really good chance that we get something like this, or even if there's one sitting back. And this is, obviously, we'll get onto attacking threat, but as a defensive structure, this is really not good. You don't really want Konate running towards his own goal. The same for Robertson. Obviously, Van Dijk's pretty good at it, but Ekitike is not, as much as he's a capable runner, is not coming all the way back here. Bradley has a lot of distance to track. We know Salah doesn't do any tracking back. The reason that Gravenberch and Szoboszlai are in here is because they're the best runners, so they give the best chance to get back. But again, it's a lot of distance for them to cover, and these two are not really going to get involved. So for defensive stability, 4. But onto the positives. Attacking threat. This might be the most threatening attacking lineup we could actually put out on the pitch. With Salah being able to get inside here, what I call this is the right side of doom. This Salah, Szoboszlai and Bradley right side, this little triangle right here, this is I think any system or lineup we have that has this is very, very, very threatening. And now that Soboslai seems to have come into his own as actually a progressor instead of just a ball carrier, he's taking up this Trent Alexander-Arnold role in some senses, where he is allowing Salah to do this counter-attack baiting where he waits to just counter-attack, and Soboslai is actually seeing that now. So this right side right here, very threatening. As for the left side, we have Ekitike and Wirtz in here, and I think the link up that these two could have together in this kind of area is very, very lethal. And then obviously we have Alexander Isak up front, waiting to poach and score a bunch of goals. So, 10 for attacking threat. As for control, again, this team doesn't really possess that much control in terms of circulating possession. Soboslai is a progressive passer of the ball, although he is getting much better at actually just keeping the ball himself and just circulating it. His chief goal is to play the ball forwards. He loves to play the ball forwards. And it's the same for Gravenberch. Instead of circulating the ball, he loves to progress the ball with dribbles. He loves to receive the ball from a centre-back and turn and play. So this midfield duo, as much as they have to play in this kind of system, I don't think they will give us the kind of control that we're looking for. And if we look at their FBref pages, against other midfielders, Dominic Szoboszlai is actually in the 96th percentile for progressive carries and the 78th for progressive passes. But then he's in the 51st percentile for pass completion, which indicates that he's taking a lot of risky passes, progressive passes that sometimes are not completed. And it's a similar kind of thing for Ryan Gravenberch. He's in the 84th percentile for progressive carries, and his progressive pass numbers are also above average in the 62nd percentile. So what you're getting with this system is a ton of attacking, a ton of progressive play, a ton of runs forward, a ton of interplay and link up and 1-2s, but you're not really getting any control. So for that reason, giving it a 5. But one thing that this system does really well is it gets a bunch of cool, fun, new players on the pitch. And so for personnel, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 because Ekitike is in the team, Wirtz is in the team, Isak is in the team. We still have maybe our two best midfielders. This season, they definitely have been. I'm still really high on McAllister, but this season, they've definitely been our two best midfielders. And overall, I feel like it's very close to having the best 11 players that we could on the pitch in one team. It would be nice to see Kerkez in. It would be nice to see Frimpong in because they are new. But at the end of the day, they aren't really what's needed for this team. And this season, they definitely haven't been that inspiring. So overall, this system gets a 28 out of a possible 45. That's all right. So now, on to the fourth best system. And to some Liverpool fans, this might look really familiar because it's the same system we played when we beat Frankfurt 5-1 in the Champions League. For the most part, it's the same midfield and defence. The only addition is Jeremy Frimpong is in at right back. And across the front four, instead of Ekitike playing as a left winger, he's actually as a left striker. Isak is his right striker, Gakpo comes in at left midfield, and Wirtz is a pseudo right midfielder. And I say pseudo because he doesn't actually play out on the right wing very often. He's given license to come inside, play in this kind of number 10 or just behind a striker, and then that allows Jeremy Frimpong to play all the way up and down the right wing. Obviously, in this game, Frimpong was injured after like 15 minutes, but the point still stands and the threat is still there. When Bradley came on, he was able to be really, really effective getting up and down this right wing. So I can only imagine that Frimpong would be even better than him because that's exactly what his game is suited to. Now, you might be thinking, why is this the fourth best system if it actually led us to winning a game 5-1? And it's because I think overall it's not actually the best system and there are some things about it that aren't great. And we actually just played a really, really, really bad team. And their first goal when they went 1-0 up was probably the best example of why the system isn't actually very good. The balance, I've given it a 7 because I think the way that the midfield works with the attack and the midfield works with the defense is actually really good. With Wirtz being able to come in, Frimpong being able to get on, and the defense essentially sliding over into this back three, each player seems to work very well with their counterpart. Wirtz is able to provide a link between the forwards and the midfield. Obviously, this was Curtis Jones in the Champions League, but I assume Gravenberch would have been here if he was fit. Gravenberch and Szoboszlai provide pretty good protection for this back three, and Gakpo complements Frimpong's width with width of his own. As for defensive stability, I've given it a 5 because I don't believe that it's actually the best rest defense or the best divvying out of defensive responsibilities. I think Florian Wirtz having a role in defending either when he's in this number 10 with the other midfielders or if he's out on this right side being asked to press. I don't think it's the best way to divvy out defensive responsibilities, especially if Jeremy Frimpong is going to get on up and we're going to rotate into this kind of 3-5-2 rest defense kind of thing. I don't think Konate is very good running towards his own goal. Neither really is Robertson. And like I said, Florian Wirtz having any defensive responsibility in the middle of the pitch is not good. I don't think I've seen him win one duel. And before anybody gets mad, Florian Wirtz is literally my favourite player in all of world football, so that's not me hating on him. Like, I actually just haven't seen him win any duels this season. As for attacking threat, I've given it a 9. This team did such a good job of creating chances, scoring goals. I mean, we scored 5 goals in the game, and it puts players in positions that they're actually suited to. Jeremy Frimpong being able to get up the line, really good for him. Gakpo given license to just hug this touchline, pretty good for him. Even though he is by design a central striker, he seems to do really well when he's just tasked with just hugging the touchline. Instead of asking him to get up there and cut inside and do all of that, when he's just hugging the touchline, it seems pretty good. And one thing that's actually pretty good about this system that I think is overlooked sometimes is the fact that there are only 2 real central midfielders in the lineup means that Hugo Ekitike can drop in a little bit and he's actually provided space to turn and get on the move. As a counter-attacking team, this is also a really, really good system because we have a lot of runners that can get in behind and make things happen. As we saw with Ekitike's first goal of the game, it was just one pass from Robertson in behind and he got there. The same could be done for Frimpong on the other side and maybe even Gakpo on the left. So all in all, this is a very threatening attacking lineup and yeah, that's why I've given it a 9. As for control, I've given it a 7. And that's somewhat because of what I saw in the game, but also because of what it looks like it could do. Gakpo is a kind of winger who is pretty safe in the things that he does. He likes to cut back, he likes to pass back, he likes to attack the byline instead of just taking somebody on one-on-one. Everything he does is almost safe, right? I guess there's no other words really to describe it than safe. And with Ekitike playing alongside another striker, he doesn't have to be as direct as if he was playing up front on his own or playing as a left winger. So when he drops in, he can control, he can circulate the ball, and I think it works a lot better. And we saw it in that game where he doesn't just turn and run. When he has another attacking partner, when he has a winger beside him, he likes to link up. And there's a system that I want to get into later where I think that is completely maximized. So overall, I've given control for this team a 7 because I just think that the players on the pitch will be able to maintain possession. And it might be because Curtis Jones was in there instead of Gravenberch and he's a much better or much more intentional circulator of the ball than Gravenberch. But I'm fairly certain that he'd be able to do a similar job. And then as for personnel, I've given it a 3 just because for the most part, all of the same players from the last system were in there. Frimpong is now in and Gakpo is now in. So we've replaced Bradley with Frimpong and Salah with Gakpo. Obviously, Frimpong getting in there is nice. It's nice to have a system where he's actually able to shine and be Jeremy Frimpong. But at the same time, we've now benched Mo Salah, who could be the best player on the team any given day. And as much as he's been pretty bad to start the season, his form is picking up. And I think if you ever sit what could be your best player in any given game, don't know if that's the best thing. So, for the third and I guess the second system, we have a tie. Both of the systems scored the exact same score, and I'm going to start with this one because it is the most bog standard Liverpool lineup. It's the one that we just saw against Aston Villa. It's the one that essentially won the league last season with the addition of Bradley for Trent Alexander-Arnold and then Ekitike for, I guess, Luis Diaz, if you'd like to say that he played up front for the majority of the season. And the thing with this lineup, this set of 11 players, is that it's almost perfectly balanced. You have 3 midfielders who are arguably 3 of the 10 best midfielders in the entire Premier League. They understand each other, they seem to know how to play off of each other, and they are the perfect complements for one another. You have this right side of doom right here. It's just, I'm going to keep going on and on about it because this right side, when it's on, is just incredible. Every player in this little triangle looks so good when they're on it and when they play together. And then on the left side, we essentially have perfect balance because everything goes down the right. So the players on the left are all really safe and controlling players. Like I said, Gakpo doesn't really do anything fancy. He doesn't do anything erratic. He doesn't do anything stupid. McAllister is the perfect complement to Gravenberch and Szoboszlai. Because as I said earlier, they love progression. They love to get the ball up the pitch quickly. McAllister doesn't really need to do all of that. Where Szoboszlai and Gravenberch are like, let's score right now. McAllister says, hey, it's alright if we score in 15 minutes. I'm in no rush. And another thing that McAllister brings to the team is that he's actually a really good defender. And it's one thing that I've really liked about watching him since he joined, 3 seasons ago, is that he really does get stuck in defensively. As you can see, he's in the 89th percentile for tackles and the 98th for blocks. So he really does get stuck in. And what McAllister being involved in that midfield three does is it allows Dominik Szoboszlai to actually play as more of a half winger or a number 10. And when you compare his stats with other players when they play in that position, his stats look even better. Now, obviously, they are the exact same stats as when he's a midfielder. They are just compared with different players. But when he plays in this midfield three, his role is a lot different. He gets to play in and around here as opposed to all the way back here. So for balance, like I said, it's a perfectly balanced team. I've given it a 10. For defensive stability, it is probably the most stable defensive structure we could have. Robertson being in at left back, Van Dijk, Konate and Bradley. Probably the best 4 defenders we have in each of those positions. With this midfield three, as I said, McAllister, great defensively, somehow, even though he's tiny. Gravenberch is a pretty bullish and dual-winning midfielder, and Szoboszlai is probably the best runner we have in the entire team. As for the front three, their defensive roles are pretty minimal in the system. They are really just tasked with zonal pressing. They don't really have to get into anybody man-to-man, and it allows us to hide Salah, who is never, ever defending for us. One thing to point out is that if a team has a left-back like Marco Correa or maybe even Aït-Nouri over at Man City, if they can find a way to get them playing in this little pocket behind Salah, then that does cause some problems. But that is something that you get with Salah no matter where you play him, if he's as a right winger, or what system or what players are playing around him. This kind of area in behind him, between him and the fullback, is always clear, and it's because he's always looking for counter-attacks. And now on to attacking threat. By gaining a lot in balance and defensive stability, you lose a decent amount in attacking threat. But I think the system isn't really geared towards being threatening in attacking sense. It's geared towards not conceding much, winning games 2-0 like we did at Aston Villa. It's not the type of team that's going to go win 5-1 at Frankfurt, but it's the type of team that's going to prevent a team from scoring a goal at all. And that's not to say that this isn't a really good attacking lineup either. We still have Salah, who could go for a hat-trick any given day. Ekitike is probably the best striker at the club. Szoboszlai is still fantastic getting forward, and McAllister could pop up with something every now and then. Even Gravenberch is getting forward and scoring goals this season. So I've given it a 6 overall for attacking threat, but it's definitely the least threatening one that we've seen so far. I'll keep control short is also a 10 for all of the same reasons that I spoke about with balance. It just has the right players for circulating the ball, for being safe, for not taking too many risks. So control, a big 10. And for personnel, like I said, doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, if your system gets you wins, your system gets you wins. Doesn't matter who's in, who's not in. But there are some players who miss out who are pretty big signings and could be pretty important to this team going forward. Isak doesn't have a role here, Wirtz doesn't have a role here, neither does Frimpong or Milos Kerkez. So 2.5 for personnel, just because these guys all miss out. So onto the system that's actually tied with that previous system for second place, I guess. We have this 4-3-3, which is essentially the same system, but with different players and different responsibilities. Instead of McAllister, we have Wirtz. So instead of a controller, we have a creator. And that means that with Szoboszlai in here, he's no longer as integral to this right side of doom in terms of progressing the ball, and he is tasked with being a bit more of a protective player, especially for Salah, who is not going to be tracking back as much. And since Wirtz is probably going to take up places like this or positions like this, we need a little bit more in terms of rest defending. Now, while that does take away some from Szoboszlai in an offensive sense, it gives him greater license to be more of a controller, and we've seen him be really, really good in that role this season. It also allows Florian Wirtz to really have the keys to the attack, and when he's playing behind these three up front, who I would say are 3 best attackers, I'm sure that good things will happen. But on the whole, this team is less balanced than the last one, simply because we do not have as many complementary pieces We do have some players that are playing in, I guess, new positions to them. Even though Ekitike has operated on this left wing a little bit for us, it's not his desired position. But in order to get players like Isak alongside Ekitike with Wirtz in the same team, these are the kinds of sacrifices you have to make. And these are the kinds of positions that players like Ekitike are going to have to learn how to play. So overall, I've given this squad a 7.5 for balance because I think it is almost as balanced as the previous team. And although it does give up some in terms of tactical symmetry and complementary pieces, it gains a lot in attacking threat, which we'll get to in a little bit. As for defensive stability, the one big no-no is that Florian Wirtz is now being tasked with having a defensive responsibility. And he has been one of our worst defensive-minded players in the entire squad. So now I'm editing this video, and literally the day that I recorded the video, which was the day of the Champions League game against Real Madrid, Florian Wirtz decides to put in his best defensive performance that he's had all season, and now I feel like an idiot, so thanks, buddy. I mean, I've seen the forwards do better in a defensive sense than him. So giving him responsibility in defense is kind of scary, but I've only docked it to a 7 for defensive stability because he's playing alongside a really athletic and physical player in Hugo Ekitike. One of the problems that Wirtz faces when he is involved in this midfield is that he's playing with Gakpo on his left, and Gakpo is not the most physical or willing presser, duel winner that we've ever seen. But I feel like with, and again, this is all theoretical, I feel like with these two working in tandem with a defensive-minded fullback and Robertson behind them, Wirtz's defensive deficiencies will be mitigated somewhat. And on the backside, with Szoboszlai dropping a little bit deeper and having more of a tempo controller role, it means that Wirtz is not tasked with the same defensive responsibility that McAllister was in the previous system. So therefore, we're going to stick with the 7 for defensive stability and get on to the good bit. Now, the good part of this team is that it is probably the most threatening attacking setup that we could probably put out on the pitch. With Wirtz playing directly behind Isak, Ekitike and Salah, with Szoboszlai still having a really big offensive role, this is probably the most attacking squad that we could put out that still has some semblance of balance or control. And it's a lineup we haven't seen this year because whenever we've played this 4-3-3, we have always played with Cody Gakpo as a left winger. And although Cody Gakpo is a fantastic player, I think because he isn't even suited to left wing himself, just having a better player in Ekitike out there would probably do a lot more for the team. And I'm sure that we'd see some really good link up between both him, Isak and Wirtz on this left side. So yeah, keep it short and simple, attacking threat, 10 out of 10. As for control, we do sacrifice some control. So the previous system had a 10 out of 10 for control. And that's because we have players like Gakpo, who as much as he's not a ball circulator, he's very safe, which means we are actually going to keep the ball a lot more than we lose it. And McAllister, who is, like I said, control personified. Now, losing those two players from this team means that it's a lot more risky, or a little bit more risky. But at the same time, we still have Robertson at left back, who is still very safe in his decision making and the things that he does with the ball. We still have Isak, who is not dropping into midfield and trying to turn and take players on. He's more of a set and spin kind of player. So we don't lose as much as it probably feels like, especially when you lose a player like McAllister. You think, damn, we're going to lose so much control. But when you think about the way that each player complements each other, I don't think that loss is as big as it first seems. So for control, 8 out of 10. But this is where this squad gains a lot of points. And like I said, this is a bunch of fun, so it doesn't really matter who's in, who's not in. It's very arbitrary, but for me, having the players that I want to see on the pitch makes it really enjoyable for me. So that's why personnel here gets a 5 out of 5. Ekitike's in there, Isak's in there, Salah remains in there, Szoboszlai and Gravenberch are still there, Florian Wirtz is playing. It's heaven. But now on to the winner. What I think is the best setup that Liverpool could run with the players that they currently have. Okay, I want you guys to be able to enjoy the breakdown, enjoy the analysis, enjoy the system and what I say about it. But I can't help but chime in here and say, this is the exact lineup we ran against Real Madrid literally 2 hours after I recorded the video. So if I ever needed any validation and to feel good about the things that I say about football, thank you very much, Liverpool. Thank you. And it is this 4-3-3, which is it is exactly the same as the team we went to Aston Villa with, But instead of Cody Gakpo as a left winger, we have Florian Wirtz. So all of the same things I said about the previous team are true. Very balanced, control heavy, defensively sound. But instead of Cody Gakpo, we have a creator in the left wing in Florian Wirtz. And it gets him into the team in the position that I think is probably his best, or obviously not his best, but it's definitely his best in the Liverpool team. Putting him in the midfield is not ideal. He has defensive responsibilities and he's very defensively deficient. Playing him on the right is not ideal because it means that maybe Salah has to sit out. But even if we find a way to get Salah in, him being on the right side is not suited to his game. And as this heat map that I'll put on the screen now will show you, at Leverkusen he played a bunch on the left and he was really, really good there. But with Liverpool, we're tasking him with being in the middle on the right, and it's not really working as well as we thought it would. So having him out on the left wing, being able to link up with other players in those positions, Ekitike up front with him, McAllister in the midfield there, I think it's the best position for him to play. And we get to regain, or retain, I should say, a lot of our structural integrity. So I have dropped balance from a 10 to an 8, just because I think Gakpo as a left winger is much more safe, provides more balance to the right side of the pitch. It allows the right side to be the primary area for creativity and the primary point of attack. Wirtz being out on the left might cause the right side to be a little bit less of a focal point, which might end up being a good thing because Wirtz is such a good player himself. But we know what this right side of Doom can do. We know exactly what's going to happen if we get Szoboszlai, Bradley and Salah firing on all cylinders. Taking away from that could be a bad thing. And if we are still going to play up and down that right wing a lot, having Wirtz out on the left side is not the best balance for that. When Gakpo's out there, he's very good at circulating the ball so that we can get it back out to the right. With Wirtz on the left, we're going to be looking to attack down that side as well. It might mean that Salah's defensive deficiencies become more apparent. It might mean that Szoboszlai is less involved in the game than we want him to be. So there are some subtle flaws with this system compared to our bog standard 4-3-3 with Gakpo on the left. And I've also gone for an 8 for defensive stability. This is because Wirtz for Gakpo, he's not as good. He's not as physical. He won't win any aerial duels. He's not really going to get involved. And that's the only change. So there you go, 9 to 8. But the difference between having Florian Wirtz at left wing and Cody Gakpo at left wing is that your attacking threat goes from a 6 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. Instead of having to play down the right wing because your left side isn't giving you very much, you now have the option to do both. You now have the option to pass the ball to who was the best player in the Bundesliga last season to create for you. It lessens the load on Salah. It lessens the load on Szoboszlai. It allows Conor Bradley to chill out. He doesn't have to be everything in terms of a fullback getting forward. And with this team, control, 10 out of 10. I don't really feel like losing Gakpo and replacing him with Wirtz means that you drop so much control. And that's because Wirtz is part of the attacking line. If he was in the midfield, the control would definitely suffer because he likes to play forward. But when he's part of the attacking line, that's not so much a problem because that's his job. And then for personnel, 3 out of 5 because some players do miss out. Isak doesn't get in, Kirker still doesn't get in, and Frimpong doesn't get in. But overall, it's pretty decent. Wirtz is in there, Ekitike is in there, the Premier League winning midfield 3 is in there, the right side of Doom is in there. They're all in there. So that means that this system, the 4-3-3, the box standard, but Wirtz at left wing instead of Gakpo, is, in my opinion, the best system that Liverpool could run with their current team. Scoring 38 out of 45, it won by just half a point. But like I said, this is all fun and games. This might not be your favourite system. Your favourite system might not have even been on the list. Number 2 maybe should have been at number 4. Number 5 maybe should have been at number 1. So if you disagree with me or have any thoughts on what Liverpool could do, shouldn't do, might do, drop them in the comments and let me know what you think. But for now, that's all I got for you. So I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.